Have you ever read a story so terrifying, so real, that it feels like the author is whispering it directly into your ear from the shadows? Tonight, we're not just reading a story. We're stepping into one. This isn't fiction. This is the chilling, true account of Anneliese Michel, a young woman whose life became a real-life horror story that doctors, priests, and her own family couldn't explain. Her tale is more frightening than any movie, because every single moment of it actually happened. Anneliese was born in 1952 in a small, devoutly religious town in Bavaria, Germany. By all accounts, she was a normal, happy girl. She was bright, she loved music, and she had dreams of becoming a teacher. But when she was 16, her life took a dark and terrifying turn. It started with a violent convulsion. She bit her tongue, her body shaking uncontrollably. A year later, it happened again. Doctors were baffled. They diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to cause seizures, but the medication they prescribed had little to no effect. In fact, things only got worse. Soon after the seizures began, Anneliese started experiencing horrifying hallucinations while praying. She would see demonic faces, twisted and menacing, mocking her faith. She heard voices, whispers in the dark, telling her she was damned, that she would rot in hell. The world around her, once familiar and safe, became a landscape of fear. The crucifix on her wall seemed to burn with an evil energy. The holy water felt like acid on her skin. She became convinced she wasn't just sick, she was possessed. Her parents, Joseph and Anna, were deeply religious people. Watching their daughter suffer, seeing modern medicine fail, they grew desperate. They took her to different clinics, but her condition only deteriorated. Anneliese started to display behaviors that were beyond medical explanation. She would eat spiders, flies, and coal. She would lick her own urine off the floor. She would bark like a dog for days on end and scream for hours, her voice changing into something guttural and inhuman. She developed an incredible, unnatural strength, sometimes having to be held down by 3 grown men. The family felt they had only one option left. They turned to the church. At first, their requests for an exorcism were denied. The church, in the modern era, is extremely cautious about such claims. They insisted on more medical and psychiatric evaluation. But Anneliese's state was so extreme, so far beyond anything the local priests had ever witnessed, that they eventually began to believe her. They saw her aversion to religious objects, heard the different demonic voices speaking from her throat, and felt the palpable sense of evil that surrounded her. In 1975, after years of pleading, the Bishop of Wurzburg finally granted permission for the rite of exorcism. 2 priests, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernst Alt, were assigned the daunting task. What followed was a 10-month ordeal of almost unimaginable horror. They conducted 67 exorcism sessions, sometimes 1 or 2 a week, each lasting up to 4 hours. They documented everything on audio tapes, creating a chilling record of the battle for Anneliese's soul. On these tapes, you can hear the terrifying reality of what was happening. Anneliese's voice shifts dramatically. One moment, it's her own, pleading for help. The next, it's a chorus of deep, growling voices claiming to be Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, Nero, and even a disgraced priest from the 16th century. These entities would argue with the priests, mock their faith, and reveal blasphemous secrets. They spoke in different languages, sometimes in Aramaic, the language of Jesus, which Anneliese had never learned. The tapes are a disturbing testament to a young woman trapped in a spiritual war zone, her body the battlefield. During this time, Anneliese believed her suffering had a purpose. She felt it was a form of atonement for the sins of others, especially for wayward priests and drug-addicted youth of the era. She refused to eat, claiming the demons wouldn't let her. She saw it as a penance, a sacrifice she had to make. Her body wasted away. She broke the bones in her knees from performing hundreds of genuflections, or ritualistic bows, obsessively, day after day. Her face became bruised and gaunt. Her teeth were chipped from biting the walls, and her eyes were sunken and dark. She looked like a prisoner of war, tortured and broken. The final exorcism session took place on June 30th, 1976. By this point, Anneliese was severely malnourished and dehydrated, weighing only 68 pounds. She was suffering from pneumonia. Her last recorded words to the priests were a request for absolution. Then quietly, to her mother, she said, "Mother, I'm afraid." The next morning on July 1st, Anneliese Michel died in her sleep. Her ordeal was over, but the story doesn't end there. Her death sparked a media firestorm and one of the most controversial trials in German history. The state prosecutors charged her parents and the two priests with negligent homicide. The central question of the trial was this: was Anneliese Michel possessed by demons, or was she a mentally ill young woman who was, in effect, tortured to death by an archaic religious ritual? The prosecution argued that Anneliese suffered from severe psychosis on top of her epilepsy. They claimed that the exorcisms exacerbated her psychological condition, leading her to internalize the identity of a possessed person and ultimately reject the food and medical care that could have saved her life. They played the horrifying audio tapes in court as evidence of the psychological torment she endured. Doctors testified that with proper forced feeding and psychiatric treatment, her life could have been saved. The defense, on the other hand, presented a very different reality. They argued that what happened to Anneliese was beyond the scope of science. They pointed to the supernatural phenomena, the different voices, the aversion to holy objects, the knowledge of things she couldn't have known. The priests testified that they believed they were in a genuine spiritual battle against demonic forces. They believed they were doing what was necessary to save her soul, even if it meant her body was lost. The court was faced with a clash of two worlds: the world of rational, modern medicine and the world of ancient, unwavering faith. In the end, the court found the parents and the priests guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence. They were sentenced to 6 months in prison, which was suspended, and 3 years of probation. The verdict was a compromise. It acknowledged a failure to provide medical care, but stopped short of fully condemning the religious beliefs that drove their actions. The court essentially said, "We don't know if she was possessed, but we do know she needed a doctor." Anneliese's grave in Klingenberg am Main became a pilgrimage site for some believers who saw her as an unofficial saint, a martyr who suffered for the sins of the world. Her story forced a difficult conversation within the Catholic Church about the practice of exorcism in the modern age, leading to a revision of the rite itself. So, what do we make of this? Was Anneliese Michel a victim of demonic possession? A true-life horror story that proves the existence of evil? Or was she a victim of a different kind of horror? A tragedy born from a combination of severe mental illness, religious fervor, and medical neglect. The audio tapes exist. The eyewitness accounts are there. The medical records are documented. Yet, nearly 50 years later, there is no easy answer. Her story remains a profound and deeply unsettling mystery. It forces us to confront the boundaries of our own understanding, the limits of science, and the terrifying power of belief. It's a story that, once you've heard it, you won't easily forget. It stays with you, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we can't see, and the scariest stories are the ones that are real. Thanks for joining me in the darkness tonight. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unexplained. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was it possession or psychosis? Until next time, stay safe and question everything.